Hello and welcome to the TFF podcast by Fantasy Football Hub, our third and long-awaited episode of the 2022-23 season as we talk all things Telegraph fantasy football. My name is Fergie and I'm joined as usual by two superb Telegraph fantasy managers. Firstly, Luke Wilson. Happy New Year, Luke, and how's things with you?
Outside of fantasy football, very good. Not having the best of seasons, but yeah.
Looking forward to talking about that, Luke. And we also have the Hub's resident statistician, Carl Weeks. Welcome, Carl. How have things been with you?
Hello, Andrew, and everybody. Yeah, everything's good. I finally found it's been a bit of a struggle fantasy-wise, but I've started making some progress over the last month or two because I've been using some of my safe transfers. So things
stuff.
the sun's slowly starting to shine through.
Exciting stuff. We'll have a look at our teams in a sec. For our YouTube watchers, if you haven't subscribed yet, please press the subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner of the screen to ensure you don't miss anything. Also, please press the like button if you do enjoy our content. So for this podcast and video, we've got so many things to talk about. It's been a pretty incredible and unique season so far. I'm sure you'll agree, gents. We'll look what the data is telling us about the season so far before delving into how to attack the final quarter of the season with so many points still up for grabs. But firstly, let's have a quick look at our teams and how they are performing so far. And Carl, got your team up first. Just give us a brief rundown on your season and how you're looking at this moment.
Okay, my season, like I just sort of said, has been a bit of a struggle up until after the World Cup. I was about 18,000 and I couldn't sort of like move. And then I jumped onto Arsenal recently, and that gave me a bit of a boost. And then I've shifted to Brighton.
Cool, I'm new just.
And yeah,
six Brighton players. Wow.
Six Brighton, and I would have had more if Steele had played in the FA Cup. I'd have brought him in. I made the most some really basic errors, which I may come on to later.
Look forward to those.
Well, they're more humorous than anything else. But yeah, so my team now is I've got a 3-4-3 formation, and as you sort of mentioned, I've got 6 Brighton players. So I'm not very good at playing his name, so I should have chosen one of my Brighton players. I've got Dunk and Webster at the back, and oh my god, I need to pronounce his name.
Estupinan.
That's the guy. As my third Brighton defender, and then I've got March and McAllister and Mitsitono up front, even though he's midfield in other games. From Man United, I brought in De Gea and Rashford during the FA Cup, and Haaland up front. And my 2 Arsenal players are Martin Kelly and Saka. So in strength, I think that's quite a good team. I'm sure we'll go on to later on why I've sort of moved on to Brighton because of their fixtures. So anyway, they brought me loads of points recently, so I've jumped on them at a good time. So yeah, I'm quite happy. 1,500 points, 1,960 position, and I've still got 12 transfers left. So I'm looking forward to using those in the coming weeks.
You've got a very, very nice, well set up team there, Carl. I would say I'm pretty jealous. I'm not quite as far along with you on the setting up the team for the coming weeks. So yeah, it's looking very, very good, very, very well played. And 12 transfers left. You happy with that?
I'm happy with the 12, given what my team is at the moment. And it's quite funny. It's because I watched Arsenal play Palace. I went to the game. And after kickoff, I think there's like 15 minutes before the Brighton kickoff, I'm trying to get your phone out.
Oh my goodness!
And making all the transfers.
Unbelievable, wasn't it?
And then when the game finished, like trying to think about what Man United players to get in.
Yeah.
So I nearly brought in Bruno, but I thought I've got my stats in front of me, so I left it, and then he scored 2 goals, didn't he, in the game against Fulham? But hey, that's just life, isn't it?
Great stuff. Luke, we've got your team now on screen. Your team's looking in reasonable shape, I think.
Yeah.
What's the story of your season so far?
I honestly don't know. So I feel like I've made the same moves as others. I mean, I've got a few more transfers left, so I've got 15 left. But like, I just don't know. I just kept seeing, well, Carl and you shoot off, and I'm like, what's going on here? My second team, which I literally don't really take more than I'll chuck someone in, is my sort of vanity team to just make sure I don't waste transfers in my main one. 60 points ahead of my main team.
Wow.
So that one's about 5k, and I'm currently about, well, I don't know what I am, 13, 14k or something in this one. And honestly, I don't know what it is. But,
you'll keep climbing, because
yeah,
loads of people are still going to have lots of Arsenal players and be stuck on them towards the end of the season, I think, whereas there's lots of other teams are going to be better for the running, I think. So
I mean, I just haven't gone all in on a particular team, really. I think sort of, and I think I missed a couple of deadlines because I was messing around. Well, I was out with the kids and stuff, and just sort of completely lost track of time. So there's a few sort of key transfer deadlines that I missed. But hey, that's having a family. So my team, not that anyone should be copying it. So I've got Raya in goal, who's done all right. A Stupinian, if that's how you pronounce it. I don't know how you pronounce it, but yeah, I've got him, who's been great. Trips, I brought him back in. Saliba still, but I've just not moved him because he's so cheap.
Yeah.
I've got Adams. I can't remember when Fellaini got his final booking, I bought Adams in, so it was just an easy swap for the same price range. And then Saka, March, Fernandes, Kane, Rashford, and Tony up front. So I think my team looks fairly template, but it's not good being a template team when you're 15k or 14k.
No, again, it looks like a really, really good team. I probably question the Tyler Adams pick at the moment, and only because in this very unique season, you need these enablers, obviously, to normally to allow us to have the big boys, but we haven't got any big boys. And
well, I hold you partly responsible. In the last pod, you were shouting him out, so
I was, and I brought him in, but I moved him. I moved him on as well because I quickly realised we just, I think with Fellaini, it was a bit of an anomaly because he was getting like 4 or 5 points every single game. It was incredible. Yeah. Adams isn't quite at that level, but he is decent. But when you got players like Solly, March, Saliba, and they're so cheap.
Yeah, I did have a move McAllister lined up, and then that was a game where McAllister didn't even make the squad. I think he was sick or injured or something. Yeah. So I was going to just do that, but but there was reason at the time. But hey ho, yeah. So don't listen to me this season.
It's a good team.
That's the.
It's a good team, Luke. You're all right. Got my team now on screen. I've got Raya as well, Estupinian. I've still got Gabriel and Ben White from Arsenal. And I've got Odegaard and Saka. And I've got March, McAllister, Haaland, Mitoma and Rashford. Now I've been holding back transfers like mad. I went into the World Cup. I still had 34 left. I was really holding on, and I was incredibly patient. And then, as I always do, I kind of just open the can of worms, and then I kind of go for it. And I've risen from, I was having a pretty poor season with this. This is like my feature team that I share on the hub and stuff. I was on a pretty poor season. I was about 20k. I was in between 16 and 20k in like January and even into February, I think. And then I roughly halved it. I went all in on Arsenal, and I kind of halved it down to 8 or 9k for a few weeks. And then in these last 3 weeks, I've flown up because, obviously manoeuvring through the fixtures. Arsenal have had a couple of really good results as well, and stuff. And I did the same as you, Carl, on Sunday. I didn't even notice it until late that Brighton had this game 15 minutes after Arsenal on Sunday, and they were playing Grimsby. I wasn't expecting them to put out such a strong team as they did, and then I just looked. It's just a no-brainer. So I think I had 7 Arsenal players who'd obviously done really well. But on Sunday, I had the 7 Arsenal players. I then transferred 4 of them out after the Palace game to jump in on the Brighton players. So I had like double bubble, and this team now is currently 750th overall now. So nice. But it has only got 11 transfers left. But I would say I don't really mind because Brighton are keepers now. I think Rashford's probably keeper for the season as well. I'm probably going to move on. I'll probably keep Saka, I think, but I'll probably move on the other Arsenal guys soon. But I just saw the opportunity with the Brighton players who we're going to want anyway because they've got so many games left. I just thought, I'll just be leaving them in now anyway. So I just went for it. So this team is 750th-ish. My best team is about 180th, I think. That's gone to a similar journey, but it started off a bit better. I think that's got 12 left, roughly. So I'm not going to have as good a season as last year, where managed to get in the top 5 and then finished 40th, but still reasonably hopeful of one of my teams finishing in the top 100 and maybe this team finishing in the top 200 or 300 potentially, which should be okay for a couple of mini leagues, hopefully. So, yeah, it has been a season like no other, I think. Definitely formation-wise. I'm sure we'll touch on that in a bit, because normally we hammer in the call for 5-3-2, aren't we? And it's 3-4-3 all the way at the moment. Even the value forwards like Rashford 4.7, Mitoma 2.5, even though he should be a midfielder, Carl, as you say, and another forward. But even the forwards like Haaland and Kane have been. I'm sure Carl will argue this with me, but I think they've been pretty good value compared to other seasons, maybe anyway. Salah in places as well. I'm sure we'll all be back on Salah soon with Liverpool's run. A distinct lack of clean sheets, I think it's probably fair to say, compared to other seasons. And just these value players, like all the Arsenal players are so cheap. The Newcastle players through the season have all been incredibly cheap. And now the Brighton players, so we haven't even needed to, all the Cancelos and the Trents and the wherever else. We just don't need them. So yeah, it's been a really interesting season. Anything to add, guys? Kind of the season so far? Any kind of observations or anything?
I mean, yeah, it's similar for me. I mean, it's well, we said it on the last pod. It's that the big teams just not keeping clean sheets. Cancelo, I mean, I guess it's the first time Cancelo going in January. I mean, what that came out of nowhere. So he was in my team and it didn't go anywhere, and then suddenly I'm like, what? Okay, didn't expect that. It's very weird season, but it's good. It's like all these value players has been brilliant fun, but
I think it's been good for the more sort of casual manager in terms of, especially Arsenal and Newcastle in the first half of the season, going into the second half as well, because probably more experienced managers would think, they're just not gonna carry on, but they carried on, and they have, haven't they? And normally you get these purple patches for different teams, but I think probably more Newcastle than Arsenal, in all fairness. But I think we've all expected Liverpool. I say we, I'm talking about myself here. I don't know about you guys. Expected Liverpool to come good. Expected Man City to come good, which they starting to come good, but not so much. Expecting Chelsea defence, for example, to come good. All the usual suspects, but they just haven't really, have they? Man United have improved. Spurs have been very average, but you've got teams like Brentford, Brighton, Fulham, even all these teams who have had exceptional seasons, and it's been a tough old season for engaged managers. But I do think now we're starting to see the more experienced managers and the more disciplined managers will start rising now, because they'll have held transfers back, knowing that there's a lot of rearranged fixtures to happen. What's your take on that, Carl?
No, I go along with everything you sort of say. It's, we have expected under normal years, there's been a certain expectation, but everything's like just has been weird because of the World Cup. Like for Chelsea, you don't know what's going to. They've just they haven't imploded, but they suddenly changed direction so much, and they just haven't gelled. But they've got the potential to burst into life, and it just hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Liverpool, they've been very strange this year, and it reminded me of about 2 or 3 years ago, that time when they lost 7-2 to Aston Villa. They was hopeless that year, and that year you thought, they'll come good, and they sort of had a bit of a run at the end, but they were never like the Liverpool of the years either side. So whether this is a one-off, whether it's caused by the World Cup, will they come back next year? Big unanswered questions. Will they put a run together? Every time you think, they're just about to look like they have a bit of form, they lose some really rubbish games away. And is that just variance, or is that there's a weakness within the team? But yeah, the teams that have impressed, and there have been teams that have impressed, Arsenal, especially going forward, that the way they link up, create chances, and put teams to the sword, they've been absolutely fantastic and a pleasure to watch.
Yeah, I agree,
none of this attritional rubbish that you see at Spurs at the moment. They're playing proper football. Newcastle have had a great season, but I think theirs is built much more on solid football, and they've been much more solid defensively compared to Arsenal that have just been attacking. So it's very interesting league, top and bottom. But yeah, it's shame. Yeah, no defenders, and it's been fun because it's all about scoring goals, which makes playing the game fun. And that's what it's been this year. It's not about, get all 5 defenders. It's about being able to hop on and off the players that are hot. And Rashford, I've only just really got on him. But I know you got on him miles before I did. He scores a few goals and then he just keeps scoring. But it's been fun. So that's the main thing. As long as it's fun, that's, I live with that.
Got the top point scorers so far now on screen for the season, and this is definitely a weird, a strange one, because normally the defenders are flying high, and the highest scoring defenders at the moment are Trippier and Gabriel, both on 126 points. Ben White 122, Saliba 111, Shah 106, me 104, Botman 103 before we go down. In terms of the keepers, Alisson, strangely enough, for me, is top. I know he's had to make a lot of saves because Liverpool have been so dreadful defensively. And I know more recently they've kept a lot of clean sheets, but Alisson is the top the top scoring keeper with 135, which is higher than the top scoring defender. Ramsdale, De Gea, and David Raya have all also scored more points than all the defenders. Nick Pope 126, Sarr and Leno then in the hundreds as well. Going into midfield, then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You've got 7 players who have scored more than all the defenders again, which is crazy. So Saka 162, Martinelli 144, Bruno 137. Who, by the way, Bruno is a tackle monster. I had him for a short period a little while ago, and I wasn't expecting too much off him, but he's fantastic on tackles as well. Foden 134, who looks like I haven't seen the latest thing, but I think he's had appendix out. He's going to be out for the rest of the season. Which is, a shame for him. The underwhelming Kevin De Bruyne on 129 points. Solly March 2.6 million, 128 points. He's scored more points than any defender in the game so far, which is insane. And Odegaard as well. And then there's even players like Pascal Gross 124, Almiron 123, Palhinha, who we bigged up doing at the start of the season, 121 points, 2.8 million, just insane. And then you look at a few of the forwards, Erling Haaland 224 points, Harry Kane. In any other season, we would be saying Harry Kane, absolutely magnificent, best player in the world, best whatever else. And don't get me wrong, he's certainly not far off, but just to the 181 points this season. Rashford 4.7 million, absolute snip. He is going to be in a lot of teams' end. 148 points. Mo Salah, even though he's had a pretty average season by his standards, still scored 141 points, including that. What did he score the other day? Some ridiculous two goals, 2 assists, and whatever else he did, like 18 points or something. Ivan Toney, 133 points, has scored more points than any defender. What a strange season. Really bizarre. And yeah, we'll look at the optimum team in a bit. Can I just ask you, Carl, what's your thinking on team value and getting in enablers? Because I think so far, like we mentioned earlier, Arsenal and Newcastle players have kind of dominated the charts in terms of value. United players are coming in now, and a few others as well. We haven't needed the expensive players, but towards the end of the season, which we'll look at more in a bit, Man City, Man United, Liverpool especially, whose assets are very expensive, all have a lot of really, really good fixtures. Do you still think we need to be careful when it comes to the budget, or do you think, because we're going to keep Solly March, McAllister, Estupiñán, Mitoma potentially, that it just doesn't matter this season?
Well, I'm not as big on Liverpool's running as yourself. I think their fixtures are tricky.
Okay.
My main focus will be Man United, Man City, and Brighton. I didn't say on my team that I've got £7.4 million in the bank.
7.4.
So, if I could have a sub, that'd be quite nice. I could probably have Haaland as a sub.
Yeah, that's right.
Or Kane as a sub since I've got Haaland. So, because I don't think money's going to be an issue.
Okay.
Definitely for me at the tail end of the season, because Brighton have got so many fixtures, you have to have Brighton players. Well, you don't have to, but I will be having Brighton players, and therefore money becomes no object on my side.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. How about you, Luke?
Yeah, I was looking at that and just thinking that's why it's been so weird, is that literally it doesn't matter the money. Interestingly, still, we'll come on to it in a minute. Still, the defenders, I think, are better value than keepers, and the defenders are still better value overall.
Yeah.
But normally we're looking at that at £5 million defenders, thinking, well, that's where I should put my money, when they're sort of 2.5 to 3.5 million. Yeah, 2 million saved on all of those at the back, and it's very weird. I don't like it. My argument for having one up front is not cutting it this year. And I'm still regretting not listening to my own advice of going, well, Newcastle, they're all underpriced at the start of the season.
That's exactly what you said. You said that.
I had, I've only really, I think at my highest I had two. I had Almiron and Trips. I think that's the only team that I should have just gone for a flipping block. But hey ho.
Well, we normally spend ages, like we call Telegraph the game of value, and we normally spend ages looking at the points per million and the points per million per game. But this season we don't really. This season we don't really need to do it. We'll run through it anyway, just so if anyone is kind of struggling to look at at where some value is. So the best value player in the game so far this season in terms of points against million is Mitoma. No, he's not. It's Solly March, sorry. 1.76. He's 2.6 million. If you don't have Solly March in your team, I would recommend getting him in your team. He is absolutely unbelievable. Quickly followed by Mitoma at 1.75. Those two are by far and away the best value players in the game this season, and they will continue playing. They've got more. I think they've got more fixtures than anyone else. Obviously, they've got Man United, I want to say, in the FA Cup as well, so they have a chance of getting in the final as well. Their team are flying. March in particular is a midfielder as well. He's good for tackle bonus, as is McAllister, where's McAllister? He's a bit further down at 1.31 because he's a bit more expensive. But those two players, just crazy value. I took Saliba out, who is the next best one. He's been sensational this season, at 2.5 million. But the way the fixtures were falling and his injury, I took him out for Estupiñán on the weekend. I was going to take out Ben White, I think, but I took Saliba out again because it just doesn't matter. Any other season, we would be holding Saliba all the way through, because he's just amazing value. But this is it doesn't matter because of the price. Trippier, 3.3 million. I think he's going to be popular again soon because they come into some good, really good fixtures soon. I'm surprised to see Haaland as high up as he is, only because these expensive forwards are normally not that much. And on the keepers, David Raya is the highest at 1.5. He makes so many saves, 130 points, and he still looks good going forward. Luke, what are your kind of observations on the points per million? Does it even matter anymore?
I've just literally done a quick calculation off the previous slide, and you can get 9 of the top scorers in budget. You just lose Alisson for Raya, and I'm trying to think, and then don't take Bruno, and you that's just bonkers. That you can get the top three or four players in every position.
And bearing now, right? Steele for Brighton seems to have nicked Sanchez's place.
I know, he's dirt cheap, isn't he?
He's 2.2 million.
So, yeah, I know. just when you need more money.
So Carl's gonna have about 12 million in the bank as this rate. But yeah, Carl, in terms of value now, I know you just answered and said that it doesn't matter, but is it, is there anything kind of pokes out here to you still in terms of anything to be looking for the final quarter of the season?
Well, to me, the final quarter is it is about value if you're struggling for the value, but it's much more about fixture volume, which I think we'll come on to. And it's like, it's no point having the best value player if they've only got like 3 games to go. So you mentioned Raya. Henderson from Notts Forest was better value. So was it's Neto of Bournemouth in terms of value. He's made a lot of saves. He's at 1.69, and Foster.
Yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned the big names, Newcastle players underpriced in defence. Tavernier if Bournemouth had more games. But yeah, that's about it. Nothing else.
Yeah, this is not a whole lot to talk about, is there? Because normally we're trying to find the three-ish players or 4 players in here to supplement our sea of premium defenders and whatever else, but it's not needed, is it?
We've got a chance. Let's move past this section. We can finish before
midnight points. Absolutely. So yeah, I think
it may be a different. It may be a different story if Brighton didn't go so far and didn't have so many fixtures to make up. But because they're flying high, they're in the FA Cup semi-final and they've got 3 games to make up, which is more than any other team, and all their players are dirt cheap. That's why everything just changes. Yeah, so those are such big arguments. So over most teams, they've got at least 4 games, maybe 5 if you include the FA Cup final. 2 of their extra games will be at the tail end. They're cheap, which is the best value players, or among the best value. So you don't need to search around about which other clubs have got value to complement the teams in the later rounds of the FA Cup with more fixtures.
And on top of that, they're a bloody good team as well. And all their players are scoring points. It's not even like you're just sticking them in for the value purposes. They're all fantastic, wonderful players. The team is on fire. They're scoring loads of goals every game. They can keep clean sheets as well. It's just the perfect storm of TFF picks, really.
What a time to be a Palace fan, eh, Carl?
Don't we love it? Do you know how much I'd much prefer it is if they all wear red and blue. They're Palace players.
We'll just have a quick look at bonus points for keepers and midfielders again, which I think has been a marvelous addition to the game. It's just a shame this year now on midfielders, really, that as I say, it hasn't been as probably as important. It was important the first half, and João Palhinha, I think, for those who went for him early, bearing in mind his ownership, I think it peaked at like 4%, crazy. But if you got on him nice and early, he really helped set up your season because he was a tackle machine. He was getting 4 points in almost every game, so he was really good. So looking at the midfielders, Palhinha, probably wouldn't advise buying him now, as I say, because there's no point. Just go for Solly March instead. Adams, who you went for, Luke, who I went for as well, but I quickly moved on. Casado for Brighton made 75 tackles, got 33 points. Ruben Neves and Soucek. You're not going to go for these players. Casemiro, quite interesting. He's made a lot of tackles since he's been at United for such a short time. The one the two, there's a few. So Bruno Fernandes for me, I'm bringing him back in next weekend after Arsenal play. So I'll be doing a switcheroo, probably, I don't know, someone like Odegaard or someone to Bruno. So United have got a lot of good fixtures. They're on form. He's on penalties, but he's also made 63 tackles this season. Got 23 bonus points, which is pretty decent as well. So I'm happy to put him. And a bit further down the list, Alexis McAllister. Bear in mind he missed quite a chunk of the season after the World Cup. Has also made 58 tackles for 24 points, so he's my team as well. But going further down, there's no one really you need to kind of look at, because they're just tacklers, and they and they don't get their offensive returns. Carl, any thoughts on the bonus point midfielders? I'd pull out Bruno and McAllister, but I'm not really interested in anyone else.
No, I looked at it in too much detail. In terms of McAllister, and I don't watch their games in depth, but I think he's playing in a bit more of an advanced position from what I hear now. So maybe a lot of the tackles was when he's a bit deeper.
Yeah.
So don't just take it as read that those tackles will continue going forward. But Bruno obviously plays quite forward, so it doesn't mean they don't. So yeah, no, it's there's a good list there, good list of players. But like you sort of say, Casemiro would be an interesting one.
Yeah, I think so as well.
If it didn't get banned all the time
after his ban.
Because
he's got a goal in him as well, hasn't he, Casemiro?
Yeah, he scores important ones as well.
Very good player, but he's needs a better head on his shoulders, I think, to go with the talent. But yeah, he's the one. Yeah. Bruno really surprises me, but yeah, it's amazing what a good player does when you lose Ronaldo from your team, isn't it? Like, just the difference in him. All of those points have come this like since Ronaldo's gone. It's bonkers. And
with Casemiro as well, so he's only had if you remember when he joined, he had quite a few substitute appearances to start off with, but he's had 17 starts, and he is above, like, if you look at Palhinha, Adams, Caicedo, they're all in like the late sort of 20s. So his average tackles per game are probably right up there as well. So I do think the Casemiro is an interesting one. When we get him back, still in the FA Cup, lots of fixtures to go, good form, whatever else. Looking at the keepers, David Raya has made the most saves this season, 109 with 48 additional points. Leno for Fulham has made 104 saves, 46 points. Pickford, unsurprisingly, and Meslier, unsurprisingly, are in the 90s. Guaita, De Gea and Alisson, 86 and 85 points respectively. They do get their fair chunk of clean sheets as well. De Gea is 4.1 million, Alisson's 4.5. Then we go a bit further down. Jose Sarr, 82. Ward looks to have maybe lost his place at Leicester, or at least it's under threat because Everson played the last game. And then there's not really much interest further down. But like we said, there could be interest. Ederson would be interesting because Man City finished the season with a lot of fixtures. They have Sheffield United in the semi of the FA Cup. I'm not sure he'll play in that. And then he'll have the final as well. So he could be a good bet for the end of the season. 4.4 million. Obviously not a value player, but someone who could keep a lot of clean sheets there as well. The one not on here, so he's only played a couple of games, is Steele for Brighton, who I think he's played 2 games now. He didn't play in the FA Cup. They played Sanchez in the Cup. He might have only played 1 game actually, Steele, so it may be worth waiting just a game or two. But 2.2 million again, like, regardless of anything, if he's the number one keeper, just the sheer amount of games they've got left, he could be one just to stick in potentially. I think I'm probably going to look a bit more premium, but if you are struggling for funds, he could be one. Carl, anything on the bonus points of the keepers? Is this a real factor now when you think about choosing your keeper?
It's definitely a factor, and both these bonuses, I think, make the game more interesting, and it brings a wider pool. It's like everything; it depends on the price, but particularly for this year, the cheaper goalkeepers, because they make more saves, it actually makes them much more valuable than the more expensive ones. It was interesting that you talk about Alisson earlier about how rubbish Liverpool have been, yet De Gea's made more saves. And I always had the impression that Alisson had more saves because they allowed shots from outside the box a bit more. Obviously, they've been penetrated the back line and they concede when they get close. but De Gea makes loads of top class saves. You know, he is a fantastic shot stopper.
Yeah, I'm interested in him as well in the short term, definitely.
Yeah, and I must admit, I feel sorry for Steele. Can you imagine like playing in the FA Cup? You basically give me to the semi-final, and then you're made first team goalkeeper, so you have to sit out the FA Cup games for the trip to Wembley. Where the heck? You've been reserve goalkeeper all your life.
Yeah,
and your chance of glory in Wembley snatched away from you.
Gone. Luke, anything on keepers?
No, I think it's Edison is the interesting one because he'll probably be the only well, I don't even think Haaland will be guaranteed. I think he's the only guaranteed for all those fixture pile-up for Man City. I still have a sneaky suspicion that they'll come romping back at the end and we'll nick it off Arsenal. It'll be interesting. I mean, Arsenal look a far better team. But yeah, really, it's again, yeah. Saves make it a better game. More points makes it a better game. So I'd really like to see sort of the other things come in for the defenders and the shots for the forwards as well for next season. But let's see. But yeah,
really good shout. That yeah, really good shout. I like the shots of the forwards. I like that on Sky.
On Sky's good, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. And the optimum team, Carl. Do you want to run us through what the optimal team so far would be this season?
Sure. Okay. Well, it won't come as a big shock to people that it's a 3-4-3, considering how much we've moved away from the defenders this year. So in goal, as we've mentioned, Alisson as top of the shop. And then the three centre-backs would be Trippier, who's been excellent this year for Newcastle. And then with Arsenal, we've got Gabriel and Ben White. Midfield, another two Arsenal players, Martin Kelly, Saka. Phil Foden was surprised me when he got in and seen all his points that he's racked up because he's missed so many games. You know, that's what big surprise for me. And Solly March, as we mentioned, and that just we've got so much money. We've got the three big guns up front: Haaland, Rashford, and Kane. Unheard of.
Crazy.
Yeah, and Haaland's just sort of like crushed every game. So and TFF is no exception. Been wonderful.
1,630 points. Just having a quick look where that would be on the overall leaderboards. This is with no transfers used. It would be roughly just outside the top 100, I think. 1,630 would be about 110th, and that's obviously with no transfers used. So very interesting profile.
I can't believe Saliba didn't make it as well. You know, saved £1 million on one of those Arsenal boys, and he's not even made that. Yeah. Bonkers.
Exactly that. I think he scored about 111 points. Yeah. So he's just under on points. But yeah, you're right, Luke. It's just mental that you don't like the only cheap player really in that whole team is Solly March at 2.6, and you could have easily had Palhinha or anyone like that. So a very, very strange looking team. And do you think this profile of this team is going to continue into the for the rest of the season? Do we need to kind of change anything? I don't think we do we? Because the Brighton player is going to dominate.
Well, don't keep Foden.
No, apart from Foden. Yeah, I did say profile, Lucas.
Well, in fact, you should sub him in, Fergs.
With one of my 11 left. Yeah, it's not going to change, I think, is it? Apart from Brighton. But yeah, looking at 3-4-3 with two premium forwards. You very rarely see one premium forward, never mind two. Crazy stuff. I've got a slide up now for those watching on YouTube, fixtures and targets, and this looks throughout the month of April. We didn't want to squeeze it all in because it looks a bit naff, but this is looking at kind of the teams and players now we're going to target for the rest of the season. And Carl, I'll start with you if that's okay, just because you mentioned it earlier. I think you're quite clear on the teams that you're going to be targeting for the end of the season. In terms of your very rough plan for your 12 transfers left the rest of the season, where are you going to be kind of focusing those transfers?
Well, I'm going to get rid of my two Arsenal players, definitely in the short term. So we come at a very interesting time of the season of this pod, in the sense that we're just coming up to a double game week.
Mm.
And where possible, I think you should be making transfers or finessing your players on some of the teams that you wish to have, most notably Man United and Brighton, because they've got, I think Man United played 26, Brighton's 25, so they've got 2 and 3 games on Arsenal in the league, plus they've got an FA Cup semi-final. So that's a lot of games. So I was thinking, funny enough, the one thing, if Brighton are quite difficult to get to because they play Saturday at 3:00. One thing that I would do, or if I had another Brighton player to fit in, I would be selling Haaland on Saturday and buying a Brighton player, or any other player, because Man City haven't got a double coming up, so they don't play midweek, and you can get Haaland back because I think they're on the 5:30 the weekend after.
They are.
Yeah. So you could like go out and then like 3 games later get back in. You get extra 3 games for 2 transfers. But what you could also do, I was trying to sort of think about, is you'd transfer Haaland for a Brighton player, and then an Arsenal player you could transfer to like a Man United player, and then that Man United player, if you so desired, could go back to Haaland, and you get 5 extra fixtures for 3 transfers. And then I thought, oh, I've got Kane in my team. I haven't actually, because I looked and I realised that. What you could also do is actually switch Kane at a later stage to go back to Haaland. So you could actually move Haaland to Brighton, Arsenal to Man United, and you get Haaland back by switching someone like Kane or some player you don't want back to Haaland, and then you're minimising your transfers, but you're shifting, you're twisting some of the players within your team to be those with extra fixtures, if that's your desired outcome. And of course, because it's only a double game week, if you so desired, you could actually go for any team in the if you're getting out Haaland, and this is I looked at the fix, you could actually go for an Aston Villa player or any player who's got a double, and then come back out at a slightly later stage. So it is a very interesting time. But if I didn't have so many Brighton, I'd be kicking out my Man City players, bringing in Brighton, and then getting my Man City players back after the double and getting those extra fixtures in, and keeping my Brighton players and getting rid of some of my other fringe players. That's how I would be tackling the next week or fortnight. Longer term, I will then keep the bulk of Man City, Brighton, and Man United, and then maybe just rotate one in, 3, get an extra fixture and then transfer back. So I think I've got like so many. It's not like huge, but I think I've got plenty 12 is plenty to work with. I don't need to get to any other team in. So it's just like most of them will be luxury transfers. So I'll be using 3 or 4 next week, and then I've got 8, and I'll just like may use them right at the very end when the fixtures are released for the doubles, if there's any good opportunities there.
But we know who's getting them, right? It's the same sort of teams. It's Man City, Man United, Brighton, maybe Newcastle. Yeah. They're all the ones you're targeting anyway.
Yeah, but like so like when like I said, I'll be going back to Haaland. I think Spurs have got tough fixtures coming up after they play Southampton. They're playing, some of the top teams. But you may sort of say like Kane may have some good fixtures, and you may just jump on for him for 2 weeks, then jump back, because I don't think I will need those transfers right at the very end, which normally I'm struggling to manage my transfer Kane at the death of the season. Whereas the way my team's set up, I don't quite see that at the moment.
I certainly think, to your point, that they already have been, and I think there continues to be at this period, massive opportunities. Like this 4-for-1. We've even seen 5-for-1s before. There's still 3-for-1s. There's still 4-for-1s. Not too sure we're going to get that as much towards the end of the season. So I do think now. I think I put it in my Hub article this week. Like, the opportunity for me has already gone and is still ongoing. But I kind of agree with you, because the three FA Cup, the teams that are going to be left in the FA Cup final are teams are targeting anyway. Like, it's probably fair to say that Man City are very likely to beat Sheffield United and go to the final. And we also fancy Man United and Brighton in the other semi as well. So regardless of the result, we'll have lots of their players anyway, and they'll all double twice towards the end of the season. So I kind of agree with you that we're not really having to hop around teams. We can just maneuver through the transfers in the short term to take advantage of of these 3-for-1s, 4-for-1s, and then land on those teams, knowing that they're all on form. They're all going to have lots of fixtures. They're going to be in the FA Cup final, and yeah. How about you, Luke? What's your thinking? You've got a few more transfers in us as well.
Yeah, I've got. So this week was always going to be a big mover for me. So because I'm chasing, I don't think it's in my interest to load up on Brighton. I think I'm going to back a horse and I'll back United. Yeah. My aim is to try and predict the FA Cup final and use that to push me up. So I'll be going for Man United players, and then when I can get back to sort of whatever is Saturday the 8th of April, I'll be looking to load up on City off various people in my team. Like I said, I think I also quite fancy City to still come back in the league. I still think they're the best team in the league. I don't think Arsenal are. I mean, if they win it, that'll prove me wrong. But I just think City's quality is the highest in the league. So it's just whether they chuck all their eggs in the Champions League basket. But yeah, so if you were chasing, I would probably getting Brighton, and you're probably chasing people with a load of Brighton like Carl's got. I think if you want to make ground, you're more likely to make ground backing United. But I think Brighton are actually probably a safer bet because they're better value. So yeah.
We'll look at the ownership next, because it's still quite interesting on some of your comments there, Luke, on the ownership of some players. It's quite bizarre.
How many United teams are dead teams though?
Yeah, no, that's
when
fair.
You bring it up, like they always start. They're always inflated. There's 25% ownership and dead teams because half the world supports Man United, don't they? But still don't understand that.
But isn't that the problem of okay, maybe the top 100 could be loaded up on Brighton, but if you're sort of saying that you want to sort of like cut through, are you like not cutting through the more people who would be loaded up on Man United? Because
I don't. Well, maybe at my position it's so bad, but I can't believe anybody who had Man United early in the season, the dead teams, will be anywhere remotely close to sort of top 20k, let alone sort of top 1,000. I think the serious players are all going to be top 5k, and they're going to have less United and more Brighton. That would be my theory. I wish we could get those stats. This is where Fergie goes, well, you're completely wrong, Luke. No. Well, hold that thought. Go on
then. Yeah, well, I've just got an update on remaining transfers, which is quite interesting, which the Telegraph publish every week. If you haven't seen it, go to Telegraph Fantasy Football, and they've got a fantasy section which they publish every week. The top 10,000 transfer average 11.36, which I'm kind of in that ballpark now. I was on 15 last week, and I think I used 4 on the weekend. I think this might have actually been before that, actually. So I'd imagine it's lower again. The average for the top 1,000 is 8.96, so that's just nine transfers, and the average transfers remaining, I think this is quite high actually still. For the top 100 is 8.51, which
wow.
I think that's quite high. I was expecting that to be less. So that just, having 9 left and being in the top 100 is pretty good going. So congratulations to anyone who's done that. You've maneuvered the season incredibly well. Any thoughts on those averages, gents? A touch higher than I thought they would be, but
way higher than normal at this stage. Like normally, I think that top 100 would be about 5 or 6 at this stage.
I think so as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Any observations, Carl, on those transfer counts?
No, it's one of those. again, it feels a bit high, but I don't follow it enough through the season to know what it is, especially because we're quite late into the season now, and you see it on the Sky ones that the transfers have stabilised a little bit and are higher. So yeah, perhaps it's not. I think there's a big mix in there. Probably have quite a few higher and quite a few quite low.
Yeah,
I think the optimal team kind of highlighted it again that there have been so many value players that it's probably easier than ever to get a high scoring team that you can just set and forget.
Yeah.
Felt quite smug at last in the last pub, but sort of New Year was like, right, I can sit on this. Happy days, nicely positioned.
Yeah.
That worked out well.
Yeah, I suppose just my take on looking at the fixtures and targets. Like I say, you can't go far wrong by piling on Brighton at any time really, because they're such good value, especially the midfielders. Like with the defence, there maybe is an argument, just because their fixtures defensively. So they got Brentford and Bournemouth, and away to Spurs, away to Chelsea, and then they have Man United. So you could argue maybe, but there's such good value and the volume. I'd get them anyway.
Yeah.
I do agree with you, Carl, on Haaland. I think he is, because this game doesn't have captaincy, I think you can maybe get away with not having him from Saturday the 1st of April all the way through to Saturday the 15th of April. They only play one game in that time, when other teams, including Man United, have 3 games in that time. Spurs have 3. I think looks like Leicester have got 2 or 3. Brighton have got 4 in that time. Villa have got 4. Chelsea 4. Newcastle 4. Brentford 4 as well. So yeah, there's definite opportunities there to move off and then move back on, leave them in for the close. Looking at Newcastle, I haven't got Trippier. I'm not sure if I'm tempted to get him back. I'd be going more for the fixture volume, but they don't seem as tight as they were in the first half of the season, and they do play a lot of games where I feel they might concede. So I think they'll concede against United, away to West Ham. I think they'll concede away to Brentford, and I think they'll concede away to Villa as well. So I'm not massively keen on them, but they have got the volume. So I think in the short term, I'll be targeting Man United away to Newcastle. This is moving on to some of my Arsenal players now. Away to Newcastle, it's not the easiest game. Then they go home Brentford, home Everton. Then they've got Forest away. Then they've got the FA Cup, and they're just going to have loads of games towards the end as well. So Bruno Fernandes is one I haven't got. I held him and he was brilliant. I'll be bringing him back. I've got Rashford. I'll be leaving him in. And I may go for De Gea potentially, maybe a defender, maybe someone like Luke Shaw. I do like Luke Shaw. He's got quite a few attacking returns this season as well. I'll probably leave Man City for the time being, and again I had Ake for quite a while just because of his price, the 3 million, and he did okay for me. He started a few and kept a few clean sheets and stuff, but I'll probably leave him until the back end of April, going into May, if I do go back at all. I think Liverpool's fixtures, I agree with you, Carl. I think they're quite tough in the short term. Away to City, away to Chelsea, home to Arsenal, but after that they are really nice, and they've got a lot of fixtures left to go. They go Leeds, then Forest. I haven't got the rest in front of me at the minute, but they do have quite a good finish. So I'll probably be looking to jump back on Salah potentially on Monday, the 17th of April. I think is when I'll look to go back on Salah, and maybe look at the defense as well. And this is the only thing where you can maybe need to be a little bit careful on team value, because if Liverpool are showing shoots there of back to their old ways, then there's potentially players like Trent and Robertson who are ridiculously expensive, but you could want them for a period if they're looking good. So it just maybe to have Salah, Haaland, Trent, Robertson, Kane, and anyone else, you need a few quid. So I would just bear that in mind. But if you are packing your team with Solly March and McAllister and Mitoma and wherever else, it may not matter. I don't think I'm going to go for like Villa players, Newcastle, I may go for one or two. They don't really excite me. And then towards the end of the season, then I'll definitely be looking at, as I'm looking anyway, Brighton players, Man City and Man United are probably the three I'll be targeting. So that's where I'll kind of end up and dead end my team into. I think think we're all sound reasonably similar in our approach. It's fairly obvious, I think. Anything to add, gents, before we move on to ownership?
The only thing I'd sort of say is when you sort of like aim for the FA Cup teams, which I've always done historically, and obviously I'm doing it again, is teams get heavily rotated. Like sometimes Man United have been a godsend this year in terms that they've been very consistent with the lineups. Defensively, I must admit I couldn't name their back four because they seem to sort of change a bit, or whether it's injury, and the same with Man City. I wouldn't have confidence in jumping and knowing that they'd be playing week in, week out. But yeah, I think otherwise we're aiming towards the same landing place.
Cool. Just a quick look at ownership. And I looked at this the other day because I did take Haaland out a couple of weeks ago, and then I brought him back in because I saw his ownership, and he's still 72% owned. And I'm not normally one to look too much at ownership in TFF, but I think, again, this season is a bit of an anomaly. Haaland's an anomaly in himself, right? And I would have missed out on his FA Cup hat-trick had I not brought him in the week before. And I know some people did because they got a mixture of like maybe Kane, Rashford, maybe like Mitoma, and they're on like a 4-4-2 or a 3-5-2 as well. So I know some missed out, but 72% is quite high, and I did bear that in mind when I brought him back in ahead of his hat trick. So I was quite fortunate there. Trippier is 53% owned, probably historic, I'd say, because they haven't actually had many fixtures recently, have they? I do think Isaac could be an interesting shout if you are looking for a bit of a differential. Seems to have got that spot now. They've got quite a lot of fixtures coming up in the short term. I do like Isaac, but yeah, Trippier 53%, Saka at 46%, again, which is part of the reason why when I look at my Arsenal players, who I'm keeping and who I'm letting go, I think this is one of the reasons why I may stick on Saka, because again, what he did on the weekend, if he does that again, half the game own him, you're gonna fly down the rankings. Saliba 43.8. If he is injured for weeks and weeks and weeks, obviously you expect that to go down. Rashford 43.4, Kane 43, Martinelli 40, Kevin De Bruyne quite surprisingly 38% of teams still. I think that's quite high. It hasn't really done it this season for his price, I don't think. Odegaard 28, Salah 21, Foden 21. That's going to be a transfer out for lots of people. Gabriel 20. Nick Pope and a few of keepers. Almiron is still in 17% of teams as well. Luke, any thoughts on the ownership? And I suppose, does it influence you in any way in Telegraph like it does in other games?
No, not really. But it's because there's not the captaincy. So
yeah, I get that.
I mean, I think you frequently say this, but that hiding behind the armchair of, oh my God, if they score a hat trick, it's like 40 odd points, but it's 20, and you can make up with value around the rest of your team.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the thing that I'm looking at here is I'm trying to figure out dead teams. So I instantly go to kind of the Sky mentality of the number of number of ownership versus the top 1K. But with Salah at 21 and Foden at 21 and Nick Pope at 20, and I'd always almost probably chuck it. I don't know whether you're chucking KDB at 38. It sort of suggests to me that there's at least 20-25% of dead teams out there with those numbers, because not everybody's going to have those players. But the fact that those numbers are so high on those players, they can't be engaged.
Yeah, no, fair, and agree with that.
I sort of agree with it, but I don't think. I think it's a bit harsh saying that people who have De Bruyne is not engaged, considering we sort of said a few slides ago that he's wanting like something like 4 or 5 points score at midfield. So
but he keeps getting dropped, doesn't he? That's the thing. I don't know what he's done, but he's obviously upset Pep somehow.
He hasn't had the minutes. He hasn't performed at the exceptional level he normally performs at, but he's still scored loads and loads of points. And if you're there and sort of saying, "Oh well, he's one of those people where you think he's a fantastic player, there's no thinking about it," and you think, "Well, Pep's he's gonna just select this game, he's going to be back," and he's still, when he does come back or when he comes to the subs, he scores points. So if I was the type of person who'd buy him, I would keep him. And the same way for the Newcastle defence to a certain degree, I wouldn't be rushing, if I had faith in them, which people did at the beginning, and they've been rewarded handsomely. It's not like Pope's been injured or dropped. I agree with you. There are probably 20-25% dead teams, but I don't. If I was holding De Bruyne, I'd be a little bit insulted.
Well, if you were, but to be fair, Carl, they'll be labouring around where I am, about 14-15k, if they're holding De Bruyne. Let's be honest.
He has scored. He scored 129 points. But he hasn't had a lot of that recently. He hasn't had a lot of that recently, and they haven't had many fixtures either, and they still haven't got many fixtures ongoing. So I take your point, Luke, and I take your point, Carl. Good.
Well, I apologise if I've offended anyone.
I'm sure.
Sorry, Carl.
I'm sure you haven't.
He's still looking from that.
I've never owned him, so it's okay. But I just
make my points for me now, Carl.
We've got some questions off Twitter. Thank you so much, everyone, as usual, for sending in your questions. We've hopefully answered a few of them. DB asks, after the Leeds game, is it worth coming off all Arsenal assets or worth keeping one in? He said he's got Saliba, Odegaard and Saka, and who are the best players to target from them? So, Carl, you said you're looking to come off your Arsenal players. Who are you going to move to?
Let's have a think. Well, maybe Man United and Brighton players.
Yeah.
Not
surprising.
It's a lot of it. We have gone over this, and especially in the short term, Arsenal have got some tricky fixtures. Get Man United, get Brighton. They got extra fixtures in the short term. You can always hop back. So they're very good assets, but they lack fixture volume. So I know that you're going to give slightly different answers. So I'll give you the case for keeping them. That's my case again.
Yeah, I'm completely with you, Carl. The only argument against it is if you're really low on transfers, in which case I probably wouldn't be getting rid of the really key ones. I'd probably, looking at that ownership, like you wouldn't want to get rid of Saka if you've got like 5 transfers left. I would just say keep him. But otherwise, there's the fixture gains are too good to miss. If you've got more than probably 8 transfers, you can afford to use a couple to hop off and hop back on.
Well, I would sort of, it depends on what your makeup of your team is. If all your other players are good, just say you've got 5 transfers to make and you've got 5 Arsenal players, I'd get rid of every single one of them and get in Brighton and Man United. It doesn't matter how good they are, and they are good players, but they've got an extra 4 games on them. So Arsenal have got 10 games left. Brighton have got at least 14. So that's 40% more games. So, so I would shift, even if you had less, but just not have the luxury of hopping back at a later date. But,
It's a good argument. I think I was tempted to keep. I think I'm tempted to keep Saka just because. I take your point, Carl, and and obviously you're right saying the 14 against 10, but they're not all played exactly the same time. And even though, like Man United have got more games in the short term, which they have, Arsenal do have a couple of games. Where are they? Sunday the 18th. They're away to West Ham, and Friday the 21st they're home to Southampton. And in that time, United only have one game. Liverpool only have one game in that time, and there's lots like Brighton don't even play in that time. Neither do Villa, Newcastle. So I think there's an argument to say to maybe keep Saka until that point, because in that period where Arsenal have got 3 games, so they've got away to Liverpool, West Ham, and Southampton. In that period in total, United only play 4 times, so it's a 4 for 3 in essence. So I think maybe after that, I would argue that to completely drop off them, but yeah, I'm tempted to keep Saka just because he's so bloody good, and that ownership, and whether you should keep that in mind or not. I do sometimes, but yeah, it's only a 4 for 3 for United over Arsenal at the start of this run. At the start of this run, yeah. Okay, Ewan says no questions. No questions, just looking forward to it. Thank you, Ewan. Mark Cram asks again, thoughts on Arsenal assets. He's 230th overall. That's a tremendous season. 7 transfers left, but I only have Saka. So he's got 4 Brighton, 4 Brighton, 3 United, 3 City. So he is very, very well placed. Think teams with no transfers left will be heavy on Arsenal, and probably right there. So, his team is bang on the money, right? He's already there, 230th overall, and he's already got 4-3-3 and Saka.
In that situation, I'd probably lose a couple of the City players and keep Saka, and then bring the City boys back in, because I think what we said, what was it, 4 or 5 to 1 on some of them. The Arsenal, but good. I'd trade with him.
He's got that is hell of a season you're having there, Mark. Very well played. Carl, anything to add there?
I've got nothing to add. He's got an excellent, good season. That one's very complicated, and he needs to give it a lot of thought about, like the City, because he's only got 7. It's hard to say move on the City, because really you do want them for the running as well.
Sell all your Arsenal players.
Yeah, but City have more games than Arsenal. They've got one more league game and they've got a cup game, so they've got 20% more games than Arsenal. So I'd move Arsenal before City. But he's got such a good set of players. I'm wondering who you'd move to Arsenal 1 and 2. If he had more transfers, I would say get rid of the City ones for the short term and then bring them back in. But only having 7, I would just sort of like go with them ones. And it's like, how do you? I think the only non-FA Cup player is the Arsenal one, and it's like just play around with that transfer, but really managed his last 7 well, because he's got a great team.
Yeah, and he's in a really good spot. And there's still a fair. We haven't touched on this yet, but there's still a lot of football left in this season. 14 games. We could. Solly March might get injured, right? Or or Haaland may get injured, or wherever else, and there could be opportunities. I wouldn't try and be too clever with 7 left. I think I would just see him out, and just there will be really obvious opportunities you can use them on. There will likely be injuries as well. What you don't want to do is kind of try and be a bit too smart, bit too intricate, leave yourself with 2 or 3, and then find that you have a few injuries. So very well played, Mark. You've absolutely spanked this season. Absolutely superb. Really well done. Owen Johnson, who is also having a fantastic season. He's got 11 left. He says, should be focused on getting a fullish team for the FA Cup final, or focus on bigger fixture gains. A City starting 11 can be so unpredictable. And he asks around essential players. So I think we've answered this a few times now. Essential players for FA Cup matches. If you were to pick a few essentials, Luke, who would you go for?
Haaland. For the FA Cup, if you're talking FA Cup, it's probably Haaland, Fernandes, Rashford. Trying to think of some of the others, and I mean the Brighton ones are also well priced. That we talked about Solly March, so probably Solly March. I think, yeah, the money should be Rashford, Fernandes, Haaland if you're going FA Cup. I think because I don't know, Carl. I'm interested in your thoughts here.
Yeah, it's a tough one. If you sort of say about focus on FA Cup final itself, I wouldn't be overly focused on that in terms of. I think Brighton are really good in the sense that even if they lose to Man United, they still got 2 double game weeks. So it's like they're playing an FA Cup final because they've got 2 games to make up. So even though Man United and Man City will both have an extra game to catch up, and then they'd have the FA Cup final. So if you're going into the semi-final, I would the essential ones would be, apart from Haaland and Rashford, would be March and Mintono.
Yeah,
midfielder. Those are the crucial ones, and then maybe McAllister. Or some other Brighton. Just keep Brighton players and keep shoving them in because they'll have after the semi-final as many games as even if they lose the other 2 with less rotation risk. But if you're after the semi-final, you can, and you've got some transfers. It depends on how the fixtures get announced in the last couple of weeks.
Just an interesting point. So normally, the last few years, I've been saying the FA Cup final isn't as important as it used to be because it's before the end of the Premier League season.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this year it falls at the end.
I think it's actually in June, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, 3rd of June.
Wow.
And I think so. I historically have done really, really well because if you've loaded up and you've used all your transfers and then you go into that FA Cup final with a couple of players and then you're like, I mean, I've had seasons where I've had sort of 8, 9, 10 and my big rivals have had 2 or 3. Like you it's effectively plus 40 points. That is, on average. So there is that argument that the loading up on FA Cup players, which for the last, 3-4 years, I've kind of advised against it. But if you could pick that team in the semi-final and then you've got 8, 9, 10, even 11 players in that final game, that can win the mini league for you. Because, so I quite like the FA Cup being the last game of the season, to be honest. So the only argument for really, really loading up on them.
The only I was just looking at Liverpool's fixtures. I'm determined to make a case for them, and
well, they're nice, aren't they? But
on Monday the 17th of April, their running is sensational, and they also have a 6 for 4 over most teams and 6 for 3s as well. So I just want to point this out, just because I think we may want Salah at this point and potentially maybe 1 or 2 more, but. Listen to this for a run of games they're running. So they're away to Leeds, they're home to Forest, they're away to West Ham, they're home to Spurs, they're home to Fulham, they're home to Brentford. So that's the 6 games. 4 of them are at home, and the other 2 away games are at Leeds and West Ham. That is a spanking run of fixtures, and in that time, no other team even has 5 games, and they've got 6 in that period. Others have got 4, and some have got 3. Their final 3 on top of that as well. They're then away to Leicester, home to Villa, away to Southampton. That is an incredible run of fixtures. So I just think it's just worth pointing that out because obviously they're not in the FA Cup, but they can score so heavily. Salah, as we know, can score so heavily that I just think it's worth just noting that because it could be that a couple of shrewd managers jump in on a couple of, Liverpool defenders of that period or Alisson. Like I'm thinking about maybe, Alisson and Salah, for example, and whilst most others at that point may have made their bed in Rashford, Haaland, and Mitoma, for example, which is perfectly reasonable and a great strategy. There are still opportunities to go a bit different, maybe. So
a
really good run of fixtures, that is.
Yeah, I'm just going to give you a slight note of caution on that, in that Brighton have got 2 fixtures to be rearranged, which could go in that run.
That is a really good point.
City and United have a fixture to be rearranged, which could go in there, and that could scupper that. But
you're right.
I was actually thinking I might take that tactic and just load up on the players I wanted at the start of the season and just get Trent and Robbo and VVD and just go all nostalgic and see if it pays off. Got nothing else to play for.
Yeah, I just think it's an alternative option, right, as well, because over 1,000 people watch this video normally, and if 1,000 people are all going in on Man City, Brighton, and Man United, it's gonna be hard to make gains. So I think there's an opportunity there to potentially make a few gains there as well. It's just something I would chuck in there.
Yeah, it's a good shout.
Well, could I put the argument for some Crystal Palace players if we're going to look at fixture lists?
Go if we're desperate, but yeah, please do.
No, I was only joking. but honestly, so like when you look at Crystal Palace, 8 of their last 10 games are against teams below them in the bottom half.
Yeah.
And when you relate all the names of who Liverpool got to play, I think, it's easy to say, home to Spurs, home to Brentford, home to Fulham, as if they're nothing. They're good teams. They're not traditional big teams that you automatically think of, but they've all. And Liverpool's, a lot of those. So I looked at their fixture list after your 3-1 pod, because you mentioned about Liverpool, and all their home games are against teams in the top half, except for the very final couple of games, and all their away games are away. But I can't remember, but the teams in the bottom half. But they've struggled away. They lost away at Wolves. They lost away at Bournemouth. They couldn't score at Crystal Palace. So it's not like there's no easy games away, especially when you're playing teams that are fighting for their lives, and there's a big fight going on at the bottom of that half of that table. So I wouldn't say Liverpool load up on them. I'm not saying don't. They could be, but I would just take it a bit of a caution. And maybe there's other teams that have good runs as well. Because Liverpool haven't shown that they're in the slaughter teams this year like they have in previous years.
Apart from United.
Yeah, it's fair.
Sorry, I'm prodding Carl a bit today. So I tell you what, as a side thing, Vieira getting sacked after that run of fixtures, and then knowing the fixtures he's got, that is utterly bonkers sacking that was in my mind. But
no, I didn't realise, again, this was something else I saw on Sky, the pod. Saturday's the 1st of April. I reckon he's going to come out and manage the match, and they'll go, it's a big April Fool joke.
I sincerely hope so.
No, it was a crazy sapping, but I do get the impression that he'd fallen out with several of the players, and it's wasn't so much the results. Because I was saying to my son, we shouldn't sack him. We've had the hardest run of fixtures, and we got ones all coming up. Everything's fine. But I have a feeling there's a bit of friction behind the scenes with certain players and how he's managing them, rather than the actual results itself. So I've come at peace with the decision now.
Any more questions before we move on? Stephen Troop, are you all moving off Arsenal assets after Leeds? I think we've answered this. He says yes, but I have 4. Yeah, I think it's probably fair to say we're all shifting on. Maybe leave Saka, but yeah. Darbs asks, with 16 transfers remaining, what are the best opportunities to catch up? Around 3.5k, but hoping to catch up in some mini leagues. So it's a lot of transfers. Any special moves you would potentially think about using those extra ones, or?
He's similar to my team that's doing well is pretty similar. It's about 4 or 5k, and I've got 16 left, and I'm just going to be loading up on United and Brighton.
Just basically. Get on them early.
Yeah.
Yep, get on them early. I would say the only thing I would say is maybe hold off a bit on Man City. As you kind of said, they haven't got the fixtures in the short term, so you can even load up on Brighton and Man United almost to get 9 or 10 of them, and then maybe shift a couple on to Man City afterwards potentially. So yeah, I like that, but definitely loading up, I think, is the way to go. Good question.
Well, he's got the luxury there. He's got the luxury. If he got 5 United, 5 Brighton, whoever wins that, then chuck those 5 onto City.
Yeah, good shout.
And just, and then he's got the final, and then he's got 10 players for the final.
Daniel Moody, a good question. What is the biggest TFF lesson you have learnt this season? Carl, can I ask you?
Yeah, when I come onto this pod and somebody mentions that they found a striker at Notts Forest called, what is he called now?
Awani.
Close your ears and do not put him in every fantasy football team that you enter.
Wasn't he like 2.1 million or something stupid like that, wasn't he? He did score a goal. He scored against Liverpool. He scored the winner against Liverpool, Carl. What else do you want?
But no, it's been a bit of a crazy season. So there's like, I think I've gained a lot this year by a lot more patience and sort of like just jumping on at the right times, which has happened more recent with Brighton and Arsenal before that. So yeah, save back from luxuries, first half, and the same advice that we give it normally.
Luke, anything to add?
Luke?
My biggest learning is trust my instincts and do what I say, because every season I'm like, God, they look cheap, and the fact is we picked out, well, like the Newcastle pick out, you wouldn't probably want the strikers and you probably wouldn't have got Almiron, but if you'd gone, do you know what, that Newcastle back line looks ridiculously underpriced, and got Pope and 2 or 3 of them, like those that did that were absolutely flying at the start. And it's similar with, I guess, the Brighton ones. I missed the boat because of, outside of work stuff to do it at the right time. But my number one learning is trust my instincts at the start of the season and don't diversify, because it's a game of value. And if you see underpriced teams, get on them. So that'll be my biggest takeout from this season, is trust my instincts at the start of the season.
Yeah, nice. I think this has been a good season for me in terms of I've got one overarching principle on everything, and it's team structure is everything, and I think trust the process on that is something. So this has been a very different season this season to my last one. So my last one, I got in front really early. I think it was in the top 500 in in the first half of the year, which me I don't normally do. Obviously that helped me have a very good year last year, but this year's been different, and I haven't had a good season. I was 9k 3 or 4 weeks ago, so didn't have a hope in hell at that point of doing anything really, and I managed to get that team up to well inside the top 1,000 now. Not that it's going to win, or kind of anything like that, but what I've done, I've trusted the process. I've kept to my principle of making sure that I can get to any player in one move. I still haven't had to make 2 moves all season to make the kind of one transfer I want. And even though it hasn't quite played out how I would like, I was slow on Newcastle, I was slow on Arsenal, etc. It's still kind of working out, and I'll still probably end up having a decent-ish season and win lots of my mini leagues. So I do think I've been very, very disciplined this year, even though I haven't had the best of seasons, and it's starting to pay off now, which I kind of knew it would, just from experience. And trusting that process, that keep your structure, keep your transfers back, use them at the right time, use them in the 5-for-1s in the second half of the season, not in the 2-for-1s in the first half, I think is my learning. That 2 different experiences, but both hopefully with a reasonably good outcome. But really good question there, Daniel. Thanks for that. Neil Baker, he asked for any opportunities not involving Brighton, United, City, Liverpool, or Newcastle. I'm not sure. This is going to be dominated by those teams. There are teams, I think that Carl mentioned earlier, Ollie Watkins for Villa. If you look either on FF Stuff or on Fantasy Football Hubby and Parents Planner, there are lots of teams who do have 4-for-1s still. I'm not a massive fan of them, just because the teams generally are not very good. But any other kind of opportunities, gents? I think we probably touched on this a couple of times now, actually. But no, just move on. He asks how many transfers left. Well, we know the average. Luke's got 15, Carl's got 12, I've got 11. I think it's fair to say I would like a couple more, I think, than I've got. But I'm reasonably happy with my team, like I say, because I know we're going to be all piling in Brighton anyway. So it's not like anyone is going to go any different. And he also asked, with the FA Cup final in June, you earmark any transfers for after the final day? I don't think we are we, gents? Because we're already going to have them. Or are you saving any back for the end at all? Anyone, Carl?
I'm not
saving
any with bad planning.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not saving any back for the final.
No.
Of course, we'll know after the semi-final which teams are there. But I'd hope to jump on to that team beforehand.
Yeah.
But if I've got transfers left, then I've got them left. I'll use them for the final. But I'm not. No plans.
And yourself, Luke?
No, I'd probably be on those teams by then anyway, because I've got, like I said, because I've got the 15. It's I'm going to load up on United and probably Brighton if I need to, and then I'll go from there. And then I'm City, the team that I'm targeting to bring in after that, and it will be the team that's not in the FA Cup that will shift ways. I'm sort of hoping Brighton beat Man United in that respect, because Man United players are more expensive, so it'll be easier. But
we've had 3 questions from Simon Baldock, massive fan of the pod. He asks, who do you think the next bandwagon player will be, and when? Have you got your eyes on any particular player, gents, who's reasonably lowly owned, who you think could be? I think if you're not on Solly March already, you absolutely should be. Who's in the bandwagon will be next?
Don't know. Well, if you haven't got Fernandes is
I think
one that I think you've got to go on. I mean, I like your shout out for Luke Shaw earlier, because he is quite attacking early. Well, there's parts of the season he's been quite good. So I mean, he could fly. And then I guess it's going to be a City player after that run in whatever it is, 3-4 weeks time. But yeah, I don't know. Carl normally picks an absolute diamond out of the rough here, doesn't he? So here he goes.
Come on, Carl. Let us have it.
Come on, Carl.
No, all the choice for this time of season, your pool's so narrow. You can't really go outside of those 3 teams for a bandwagon. You could say someone like Pickford, because if they make saves and they're fighting and they've got Dyche, but that wouldn't be a bandwagon, because time people realise and jump on, the season's over. So I don't think you have the same bandwagons. But Bruno was a great shape by Luke there, and I regret not getting him in the other week. But yeah,
if I was to kind of guess on what on what I think would be the best, the bestish team going forward, I'd probably go something like, I don't know. I don't think it's an argument for Alisson, but Alisson, Edison, or De Gea. I think a Brighton defender or 2. I do like Luke Shaw as well. And then you could got McAllister, March, Bruno, Fernandes. I probably wouldn't pick a Man City mid, I don't think. So maybe another Brighton midfielder or defender. And then Haaland, Rashford, Mitoma, potentially. I think that might be roughly the profile of a team, which we'll see coming in the latter stages, won't we, I think? He says, if you have more than 50 transfers left and 10k overall rank, any suggestions on how to climb further? They said he's already got 3 seagulls, but there are teams who've got 6 or 7 or 8 seagulls, so I just say go all in, Simon, to be honest. Any other advice on that, gents? Yeah,
similar. Well, same boat. United and Brighton.
Push your chips in, all in. Go for it. Do it now. Yeah. And he also asks about lessons learned to take into next season, which we've already answered. Now, Simon is based in New Zealand. And on Saturday, July the 1st, from midday, at the Stag and Hounds pub in Market Road in Bristol, he is visiting the UK for the first time in 12 years, and he hasn't been to Bristol for 20 years. And he's hoping to put together a bit of a TFF meetup. If anyone does fancy it, he says he'll even wear his Brighton 2018 top 2. He's a big Brighton fan, so people can spot him. But if anyone does fancy that, there's a TFF meetup Saturday the 1st of July from midday at the Stag and Hounds pub, Market Road in Bristol. If you want to tweet that out, Simon, I'll retweet it as well. But that would be absolutely superb. I don't think we've had a specific Telegraph meetup before. Bristol is reasonably central, I think, for quite a lot of people. I'll try and make it myself if I can. But yeah, that sounds absolutely great. So if anyone is interested in that and having a chat about TFF, please do meet up. It'd be grand. Carl, you look like you had something to say then, or were you just breathing heavily? Just posing. Good stuff. Let's just have a quick final look at our teams before we leave. So Carl, yeah, yours is pretty set already. What a team! So you'll be taking out probably Martinelli and Saka, but other than that, you're incredibly well set, aren't you?
Yeah, and I'll be taking out Haaland after he's played Liverpool for the short term, and then bringing back a little bit later on.
I think.
But personally, I'm really happy with my team, its structure, and the transfers left. The one thing I do have that confession to make, which I didn't make earlier.
Oh, confession time! Come on, let's have it.
Confession time. So I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when I finish work, my head's like really all over the place, and I can hardly think. And I think it's the FA Cup quarter-final, and is it Plinia who got booked at the weekend, so he's going to miss the next 2 Premier League games?
I know what you're going to say.
So Fulham were playing, and I had Mitrovic and I had Plinia, and I couldn't think straight. So I saw the team news, first of all, and I got Mitrovic because it said he wasn't playing. I didn't realise it was provisional estimate. So I took him out to bring a Brighton player in, which wasn't the end of the world. Mitrovic actually played and got an assist. Plinia, I thought, oh, he's playing. So what I'll do is I'll get in Foden, and then I can get Foden was playing at +12, and then on to a Brighton player. So I wait for the Fulham kickoff. Of course, I wasn't thinking straight, and the Brighton match kicked off, and I thought, oh, I can make my transfer now. So I transferred for Foden, which was like 8 o'clock, thinking that his game had kicked off, and it hadn't kicked off, and he scored in the game.
He scored a screamer, didn't he?
Yeah, and I took him out 10 minutes before his match kicked off because I thought it kicked off. And that's.
It's really confusing. I had that with Arsenal Brighton on the weekend. I had to really think, and I was actually on the golf course, and I had to set my alarm for 2:05. And you had like a 50-minute window, didn't you, to make those transfers? So you had to wait till the Arsenal game kicked off, otherwise they would have lost out on the Arsenal points. It is quite. Yeah, it's quite tense.
I had an hour. It was a long time.
Oh, you had an hour.
It's like half an hour between, but I did it before the match, and I was convinced. So I contacted the Telegraph and had some correspondence because I thought it was a glitch on their side. I said, "Where's my Premier points?" I would have done it after the game. There's no point doing it before the game. I sit in front of the computer. Anyway, that's my confession.
Good. It's a good confession.
We've all been there, Carl.
We have all been there. I think you're going to overtake me, Carl. I think your team is very, very well set. I think you're going to overtake me. We'll have to let the listeners know. Overtake my feature team anyway, because you're going to use 3 transfers here. You're still going to have 9 left. I've got to use 4 or 5. I've only got 11 left, so I'm only going to have about 5 or 6 left after this little spell. So I think you're going to overtake me, but anyway. Luke, what are your plans now for your team based on what we've talked about?
Well, one, I'm pretty sure you're not going to say I think you're going to overtake me. So
I know I won't. I'll be saying that this season.
No, I'm going to be using probably 4 transfers. So it'll be Saliba, Saka, Adams, Kane over the next week, and I may look at Raya and Trippier as well to just load up on United and Brighton. I think.
Yeah, I would, mate. I would.
Yeah, so that's about it.
You'd be in a good spot then, though. You'll You'll have your rank in the next month, and then you'll have it again in the final month. I guarantee it. You'll still finish. You'll still finish with a reasonable rank.
Oh, like my other, because my best team's 3 and a bit K, and it's got 16 transfers left, so I'm fairly optimistic with that one. It's just 60 points ahead of this one, but I thought Carl was going to go, well, actually, this isn't my my starting team that we started on the pod. It's another one. But cool.
On my one, I've still got Raya, who I'll probably leave him for a little bit, but I want to get rid of him soon. I've got Gabriel, White, Odegaard, and Saka. That's four transfers I can make there. I haven't got any Man United. Oh, I've got Rashford, so I'll definitely be getting in Bruno. I've got a ton of money in the bank as well, the same as everyone else. But I'll be getting in Bruno. I'll probably get in Luke Shaw, I think. And I'm not too sure on the others yet. I need to have a think, but I think I'll definitely be getting rid of at least 3 of those Arsenal players, if not 4, which will put me down into single digits in terms of transfers. But like I say, I'm not really that bothered because it's reasonably easy to navigate to the end of the season. So that will be my plans for the rest of the season. Quick update on the FFH Members League, £200 league. In 10th place, Mark Chadwick. In 9th place, Simon Clare. Sorry, the writing's really small. Simon Clare. 8th place, Russell King. 7th is John Evans. 6th is Sam Wood. In 5th is my team. It's a second team. This one is 511th overall. No, it's not. It's 470th overall. So that one's doing fairly well as well. 4th place, Mark Rose. 3rd, Arwin Vobe. 2nd, Mark Chadwick again. And top, Jack Palmer, who is 57th overall. Very, very well played, everyone. You're all having really good seasons. Long may it continue. And there are also some other teams who are Hub members who are in our WhatsApp chat, but are absolutely flying as well. So, Hub members having another brilliant season. Hopefully, we get the winner again. And that's it for us for this season. Shortest ever, 1 hour 36. What's going on? It's because there's no value to talk about. Look, that's just proving we talk an hour and a half about value. So we know where to skimp next time. But many thanks, Luke and Carl. Absolutely superb stuff, superb season, superb advice as always. And many thanks to all our loyal watchers and listeners for their great questions, comments, interaction, and everything else. We really do appreciate it as usual. Luke, where can people get hold of you?
Twitter, probably the easiest place. It's at FPL_equation on Twitter.
Lovely stuff. And Carl, where can people get hold of you?
At Twitter as well, probably at Darkest Jungle.
And you can follow Carl's Sky Tips every week on the pod as well. Absolutely fantastic article every single week. My handle on Twitter is at FFH_Fergie. This video recording will be on the Fantasy Football Hub Sky and TFF YouTube channel, with the podcast versions available on all major podcast platforms. If you do play Sky, we do have the 3-for-1 podcast. It's a live stream on this channel as well, so make sure you don't miss that. We're absolutely flying. So Paul and I, who host the pod, Paul especially, he's 2nd and 6th overall at the moment on Sky, and I'm currently 10th, so we're having good seasons on that. So please follow us if you don't. We also do our Nip and a Half podcast, if you haven't listened to that, where we chat a little bit of the Telegraph every week. Telegraph, Sky, Dream Team, and FPL. It's only short, it's only about 50 minutes long, but Paul and I are running a competition where the loser has to fly the other person to their hometown and put them up for dinner and drinks and everything else for a couple of days. So at the moment, Paul is just ahead of me on that. I have overtaken him in Telegraph though, which is good. So Nip and a Half podcast on Spotify. If you don't listen, you should. It's really good fun. If you like what you watched, please press the like button. It'd be much appreciated. Remember to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast, give us 5 stars, and leave a comment. Our website is fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, where you'll find everything you need for fantasy football all under one roof. including player comparison tools, fixture ticker, Opta-Stats, top player team reveals, everything you could ever need to do well at fantasy football. Sky Planning Maestro Ian Parrin has built a TFF transfer planner for Hub members, and for premium members we also have our dedicated TFF WhatsApp groups, which is really good fun. Some really good tips shared in there. All the links are in the description below to sign up. We've also partnered with ffstuff.co.uk, which alongside the Hub has the best Telegraph fantasy resources you can imagine. So take a look at that. And Paul also writes every week for the Telegraph, telegraph.co.uk/fantasy sports. We give transfer tips each week, and the average remaining transfers. And I also reveal my TFF team and plans every week for Fantasy Football Hub members on the website. And I do that for Telegraph, Sky, FPL and Dream Team. We have got you completely covered for TFF. We wish you all the very best of luck for the running, and most importantly, plenty of TFF points. We will see you in the summer for the launch of the 23-24 season. But for now, the very, very best of luck. Hope you smash your winning leagues and have great summers. Good night all.